And now finally, big data. Last topic of the semester. Big data is transforming our world. As the first quote on your handout says, big data promises to be transformative. Data are becoming the new raw material of business. Information will be the 21st century oil. So there's not much of life that is no longer affected by big data. More and more decisions are being data driven, and so we need to talk about this a little bit so you understand better how this is affecting your life. So the sources of where I get this information are listed on your handout. Okay, what is big data? Well, 3 to 5 V's. First one is volume. Huge quantities of data. Data volume is doubling every year. Pretty much every business is now digital. People, you and I, generate massive amounts of data. Every minute, there are 72 hours of video uploaded to YouTube, 98,000 tweets, 695,000 status updates on Facebook, 11 million instant messages. MyFitnessPal, I tell MyFitnessPal more about what I eat and how much I exercise than I do anybody else. So we are generating lots of data ourselves. Medical data, whether it's home health monitoring. My dad, before he died, had to step on a scale at home, have his blood pressure measured at home by a machine, and it would automatically send the results to the doctor's office. So daily, many measurements were just from my dad being sent to the doctor's office. Electrocardiograms generate 1,000 readings per second. So enormous quantities of medical data. Environmental data, monitoring temperature, air and water quality, all kinds of things. Location data. So your smartphone tells where you are pretty much all the time. Maybe there are cameras on street corners recording license plates as they go by. So there is enormous amounts of data being generated all the time. And all kinds of data, huge variety. So the regular kind of data we've been analyzing, but there's also audio, video, web pages, text, tweets, all kinds of things. And then there is velocity. It's being created at tremendous rates. In fact, data are being generated at such speeds that some companies can't even afford to store them. They have to sort of analyze them as they fly by. So everyone agrees about those 3. There are 2 others that people tend to agree on. Value. All these data have huge value. Now it's low density because there's so much of it. You have to look through a whole lot of it to get the value, but it does have tremendous value. And then finally, veracity. We have to think, is it true? Is it reliable? Is it worthwhile? So can we trust this data? So if you think about these 5 things as being part of big data. Okay, a couple of ways big data has been used in the past. Well, Amazon, when they say recommendations for you, when they do dynamic pricing, so they charge different prices and see at what point it starts selling, or compare products differentially priced. So they're testing things all the time with little experiments. Facebook uses big data a lot. Sometimes it's social experiments where they actually mess with your feed. So they did one experiment where they fed people negative. They only let the negative feeds go through, and for some other people, they only let the positive feeds go through. And they thought if people were seeing negative things about other people's lives, they would feel better about their own and post positive stuff. And if they saw only wonderful things about other people's vacations, then they would post maybe more negative things about themselves. They'd feel bad about their lives. And just the opposite thing happened than they expected. So Facebook, and they got in trouble for this, for manipulating what they saw. Facebook also figures out a lot of things about you and then allows targeted ads. So companies pay to send ads to certain kinds of people based on who Facebook thinks you are. A bigger problem is that Facebook is propagating similar news feeds, but often more extreme ones, in order to get more clicks, more likes. So unfortunately, this can lead to things like, oh, you like that conspiracy theory? Well, here, let me give you another one that's even more extreme. So that's been a real problem. There's a case in Germany, a paper, where they were looking at physical attacks on immigrants, and they realized that the most important factor on the number of attacks on immigrants was whether Facebook was used in that town and how much Facebook was used in that town. So Facebook was giving progressively more inflammatory information about immigrants as people kept on liking more and more extreme things, and eventually it led to violence. So that is a big problem with Facebook, is that they are trying to figure out all kinds of things about you and trying to give you more of what you have clicked on or liked, even if it's not good for you or true. Google. Now, Google figured out in the 2009 flu pandemic where it was spreading using 45 search entries. And they could do it much faster than any doctor ever could. Because when people start not feeling well, they go to Google and search, what do you do for a fever or whatever. Whereas if they have to go through the system, well, first they're sick for a few days and they finally call their doctor, and then it takes time for the doctor to call the county health department, and then it takes time for the county health department to give data to the CDC. So Google is a much faster way to track how things are moving through society. Elections. Politicians have become very good at targeting certain groups of people with very particular ads that will get a particular reaction, like we'll vote or we'll give money or whatever. So you are seeing different ads than your neighbors are, because these politicians have divided everybody into tiny little categories and are sending targeted ads that will appeal to that particular little subgroup. Now, the potential for the future is enormous. So McKinsey has all kinds of potential benefits. Could save the U.S. medical industry over $300 billion, and benefits retailers, governments, company logistics. One way big data was used was to help UPS figure out that they should have their trucks turn right. That if you follow a UPS truck, it almost always turns right. And they figured out that saves time and there are fewer accidents. So almost all UPS trucks turn right all the time. So there's tremendous potential for the future. In short, there's not much of the world that will be unaffected by big data. But of course, there are cautions. It's a powerful tool, and so we need to be careful with it. Bad use of data can be worse than no data at all. So Yahoo set up performance reviews, and they, of course, hoped that it would promote collaboration and have everybody do their best to get a higher performance review. Ended up with people refusing to work together because they were trying to undercut their colleagues to make sure that they were at the top of the heap. So that was obviously a bad use of data. Falsified incorrect data, yeah, people are lying or missing data, then that's not going to lead to good results. What data won't tell us. At times we need informed judgments, not more data. So when you decided where to go to college, you collected data, but in the end it was an informed judgment about what was the right place for you, right? And that happens all the time. So how should we punish a certain crime? Or are charter schools good? And all kinds of questions. So you can collect data, but data only goes so far. In the end, you still need an informed judgment. And big data can propagate racism and sexism and discourage movement in economic class. A quote from Lee Alexander, "Any algorithm can, and often does, simply reproduce the biases inherent in its creator, in the data it's using, or in society at large." So big data attempts to be objective, but it does not always succeed. So by using other things like a zip code or a name or credit score, people are profiled. And then big data ends up propagating bias instead of removing it. The poor are much more likely to be harmed by this. Higher mortgage and insurance rates, predatory for-profit college ads, and so on. Scheduling software at restaurants. Restaurants will use big data, back when they could be open, to guess when they were going to be busy, to estimate when they were going to be busy, and so they could call someone in at the last minute and say, you need to be here at 3 o'clock because we are expecting to be busy then. But if it's, say, a single mom who has no car, Well, she at the last minute has to try to find childcare, has to hop on the bus and try to make it to work by 3 at the very last minute. And if she's unable to do so, she may lose her job. So in that case, clearly hurting the poor. And this is very much going to affect you when it's time to look for a job. More and more initial interviews are online, that you will videotape yourself answering questions. And they will be the computer will be having some sort of algorithm to rate you. And the problem, of course, is that nobody knows how the computer is doing it. So if you don't get that job, if you don't get a second interview, you won't know why. Was it because you didn't smile enough? You didn't use the right vocabulary? It's all hidden. It's all secretive. So big data is affecting pretty much everybody in various ways. So it has tremendous potential. It's transforming the world, but it needs to be constantly monitored and reevaluated. We have to make sure that the goal is always helping people, not taking advantage of them. So the analysis of big data requires complex algorithms. So big data is at the intersection of statistics and computer science. My daughter has a PhD in statistics. My son is getting a PhD in computer science. They're taking pretty much the same classes. So my family sort of thinks that is all one big field, but if you're female, you call it statistics, and if you're male, you call it computer science. There's so much overlap. Big data needs them both. So what statistics does big data use? Well, correlations. Lots and lots and lots of correlations. Not at all concerned about causation, or even if the correlations make sense. They're just looking for patterns. So for example, there's a TED Talk about liking curly fries on Facebook. And it turns out the mere act of liking curly fries on Facebook is associated with intelligence. Now, obviously, that's a totally nonsense correlation, but over time, probably the first person who liked curly fries was intelligent, and then his or her friends were intelligent. They liked curly fries until after a long time of doing this, the mere liking curly fries is associated with intelligence. Target sent ads to a pregnant 16-year-old before she told her parents that she was pregnant. So how did Target figure that out? Well, it wasn't that she was buying diapers or anything like that. It was buying things like a bigger purse that might be able to hold diapers. So Target has this very complicated algorithm figuring out not only is someone pregnant, but when is she due? And it's not things that you would necessarily associate with pregnancy, but it's these correlations that over large numbers of people pull things together. Other statistics which we didn't have time to learn, multiple regression analysis, that's predicting one quantitative variable from several other predictors. Cluster analysis groups individuals together, factor analysis groups variables together, and then of course experiments, testing things. So more and more decisions in business, education, healthcare, and government are being driven by data. And having some understanding of graphs, descriptive statistics, and the analyses we've talked about in this course will only help you. So data is going to be a huge part of decisions down the road. In your job, things that companies are making decisions about you. And so it's very important for you to have some understanding of the statistics we've talked about this semester. And I hope they hold you in good stead throughout your life.